Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we are looking at the one-game NBA slate here on Friday in the NBA playoffs. We've got the Rockets back in Golden State taking on the Dubs. 3-2 Dubs right now. We'll see if they can close it out. We are going to be looking at some best bets and player props in this episode, and then we're back starting on Monday with the next round of the playoffs, most likely, as we'll be looking at some of the next series there in episodes coming forward. So continue to follow along with us all season. It's also the night before Friday here where we're going to have the email newsletter, so make sure you do check out the link in the description of the video. That'll take you right to the newsletter that you can sign up for and get that in your inbox. Take a look at what you've got, what the recap of the sports betting week is, as well as look forward to the next week with everything you need to know. So Nate and I also have a bonus parlay in there we should mention, so definitely want to make sure to check that out. Nate, let's go ahead and get right into your first look here for this game 6.
Yeah, I like Houston in the first half once again. +3 you're getting here on the spread, and I'll take that first and foremost. Maybe a sprinkle again, try to hit this Houston halftime Golden State for the win, which is +425. They're on to us a little bit in terms of it's not 5-1 anymore. It was 6.5-1, I think, last game, but obviously Golden State just punted on that game as we kind of predicted it might happen. I mean, kind of piggybacking on a beat writer who has followed them for years. But yeah, the Warriors could not give a care about trying to close that out in Houston. They need to save some energy, this veteran team. And I get it. I think they'll come back strong at home and do everything they can to win this one, but they're also going to save some energy for the second half. And they pick and choose their spots. They're veterans who try to figure out what the other team is doing, particularly Steph on offense and Draymond on defense, and then they try to push those advantages. Steve Kerr probably feels he can outcoach Ime from an X's and O's standpoint. He certainly can't from a toughness standpoint, but that's not neither here nor there. The Rockets are now +15 net in the series, and if you just remove the blowout last one, the two in Golden State, they were still +9.5 net. They had a 102 defensive rating in the first half. Steph was held to 5 for 18 from 3 with 8 turnovers in these last 3 in the first half. So Amen Thompson, all in his jersey. The Dubs slow to start. And like I've been pointing out, this has been a theme throughout the regular season. Even when they got Jimmy, they were league average in the first half. They went up to third best offense in the second half. And Houston pretty much the opposite flip. They were 6th best offense in the first half and league average in the second half since the All-Star break, and it's been way below average down the stretch of these playoff games when you're forced to play half-court offense for the Houston Rockets. But I think they can come out early with their energy and enthusiasm and keep it close or take a halftime lead.
Yeah, I like this a lot better than first quarter because I think that's going to be at least within 3 points, if not maybe swinging the Dubs way a little bit, just coming out early hot. But I could see by the end of the first quarter and definitely into the second that Houston's able to bring their energy to match it at the very least, and then start to maybe pick up the pace of the game a little bit, like you said, not trying to run in the half court. Really what happened in this last game at the end of the day is that they hit 69% from the field in the first half and made all of their free throws, missed 6 for the whole game. Let me just go ahead and give the bet because this is already stuff that I want to talk about with what I'm playing here. But just to say too, there's some spots where you can get some really 4-1 looking stuff here for the halftime, full time. Because I think the Dubs are going to go all out in this game. And I'm going to take them -5. I think there's lots of things that, we'll talk about some props we like in this game. I think there's plenty of ways to get a quick little, a parlay here with, whoever you like on the Dubs, and we'll talk about it, with them to win this game. If you're scared of 5 points, which, 5 points is about the edge of where I would probably take this, because I don't think Houston by any means is going to lay down at all. But I also think that once the Dubs made sure that they took 3 of the first 4, in their minds, they were already in game 6 before they even probably landed in Houston for game 5, which is kind of what you were referencing with, was it Anthony Slater or one of the beat writer for the Warriors? One of those guys, right? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Slater there
Yeah.
talking about that. He knew he's got a pulse on things. He has a lot of conversations with Kerr. Kerr has a decent pulse of the locker room as well, and I would hope. And so yeah, as a result, I think it was already like, look, when you factor in the age of this team, that was a big part of it. Now the 32 for 38 from the free throw line. Do you believe in that for Houston, because they started the game 11 for 11 from the stripe there, and that really was a huge part of all of it. Obviously, hitting 70% of their shots and close to that from the 3-point line, and Fred VanVleet going completely unconscious was all a part of it. But that all to me led to that game being what it was, right? Like, let's call it a 30-point game, which it was for a long time, or even at least like 25, right? For like the second quarter on, it was at least 25 until like the Spencers of the world and the TJDs came in and made it closer. But that all is nonsense. That's all just noise. The key here is that, like, I think the margins that we're talking about for Houston are, can you make your free throws and can you make the threes that you take, which you're not taking in abundance, especially because that perimeter defense for the Dubs is just locking it down. Obviously, for guys like Jalen Green, Fred had to hit some pretty, nice shots. Like, they weren't the easiest shots. Sometimes a few of them were, but at least half of them were pretty well covered, or 30 footers for Fred. And then after that, he's the buckets and ocean, or the hoops and ocean at that point. You can't miss, as you know. So I think all of that just led to this snowball effect that I don't know. I don't think, obviously the books have this at 5, right? So I don't think anybody was fooled by this. Like, well, what does that mean that Houston gained an edge on the Dubs when all things are back to sort of neutral? And 2 days isn't a lot of rest. So I'm not going to just like, that's why, 5 might seem like for me is the edge of where I go with it. Cause I think Houston's going to put up a fight, but then I'd rather have the closers on the Dubs. And that's what this is going to come back to. So I'll take the spread at what it is now.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's 5. I think the books have done this in the playoffs where they expect a dip back and they hang exactly 5 for the team they want people to back. Like when the NFL, they put like a plus 7.5. They're like, come on in, like it'll be fine. And then like they have the feeling that it could be a blowout here. That being said, yeah, I don't think Jimmy is that healthy. And I do think the Warriors are gonna have to grind this out down the stretch. So I would look at Warriors, to win right around this margin. To win by 10 or less is plus 180. To win by 5 or less is plus 400. So maybe sprinkle on some of those and hope that it's right around the spread, and the books just be like, yeah, we know what we're doing, just setting a competitive line. But my angle for Jimmy not being healthy is Draymond Green's going to rebound. 6.5 boards is juiced up here to minus 120, minus 125, I think, as I was researching. And I'm like, what's crazy? You can just take under 1.5 threes for Draymond with this rebound, and then all of a sudden you're at plus 150. And I know he's hit 2 threes twice in this series. I consider that more the exception than the rule. That snapped a streak of 13 straight playoff games without him hitting 2 threes. And I think like 8 of those he didn't hit any threes because he is not a good shooter. And they don't really need him with these lineups they're trotting out there, right, to shoot, especially if he's out there with post. Like they got plenty of other guys who can shoot. Draymond's job is mostly to defend, and rebounding, as we know, is the end of every defensive possession. The thing is, Houston like really worked hard to get him off Şengün in the last couple games, right, to get those switches. So now he's no longer necessarily guarding the guy who's putting up the shot. So it's his responsibility to come in and crash. And with Jimmy not necessarily able to go all out for all these boards in games 3 and 4, Draymond caught 8 rebounds in both of those, right? 17 rebound chances overall on average, and 8 of 14 in game 4. Jimmy only grabbed 5 of his 13. In game 3, without Jimmy out, he actually deferred on 5 rebounds and still got his 8. And then he had 0 deferred with Jimmy back, 4 of those contested. We're talking about a 10% rise in his rebound chance rate after the first 3 games to the last 2, when he realized the situation, which is like, all right, we're the backline defenders. We got to defend. We're undersized. And that's the only way we're going to end possessions. And as a great defender, he knows you got to end a possession with a rebound. So it's pretty low, given what he's capable of in that department.
Yeah, I mean, not to one up you, but you want to talk about low. His 3.5 assists for Draymond Green. When's the last time we saw a Draymond Green assist line at 3.5? That thing has plummeted. And so yeah, it's really interesting because I was looking at under PA. I was considering strongly under PA for Draymond, and I saw you go over on the boards, and I'm like, actually, I don't mind that accompanying the under PA in a parlay in some way. If you think there's going to be very specific ways he impacts the game, Pods and Jimmy have just completely vultured the playmaking sort of share of the pie that he has. Does Draymond, and the Dubs offense works in such a way that and I'll say this: the combination, especially of the Dubs offense and the Rockets defense, the Rockets are getting the guys that they want to shoot. And the Dubs are are trying to put certain guys, one of two guys usually, in the position to get the ball for the final shot because they have an idea of where they want the ball to move and how they want it to go. Since there's so much based on a ball energy, right? As Steve Kerr talks about. So I do think like Draymond is likely to end with a few more shots here and there because they're going to leave him open again. But I mean, if he still takes 6, I still don't even care if he goes 2 for 6. I don't like him to get the points. So I think this is just a tack on. I do think the rebounds are a much better look than the other ones, and maybe a nice little negatively correlated parlay like we talk about. But the aforementioned B Pods, Brandon Podziemski, I'm taking him over 17.5 PA, and this is what you were just what I was just sort of referencing when I was adding on to the Draymond conversation. Pods is definitely eating into that, and so like Pods has had 5 games now, obviously against this team, really 4 because he was almost out for one with the food poisoning, and then he just left early and didn't come back because of food poisoning. That was game 2. Game 3, he was still kind of recovering from food poisoning, and that was also a big game at home where a couple other guys started to go off for them. They introduced, now Buddy was starting to play a lot better. They got Buddy in there for like 17 points that game. They didn't quite need Pods as much, and Jimmy and Draymond even and Steph were doing a lot more facilitating, specifically Steph and Jimmy. So Pods is just really like the perfect sort of, I don't want to, I guess, linchpin, to be honest. Yeah, he's the perfect sort of like, well, let's put the ball in his hands with the option to shoot, or if the defense comes out on him, to drive and kick. And that's what he does incredibly well. So I'm taking this with him. Like the 3 games where he's gone under, like I said, we've got the food poisoning, coming off of food poisoning, and then you have the blowout when he plays another 21 minutes like the rest of the starters. So there's just reasons for all that. And the 2 games that were legit games and that you could go into being like, ooh, this is kind of Pods feeling, right? Because like this would be a good game for which role player wants to step up. And Pods is one of those role players that it doesn't seem like he's in jeopardy of losing minutes. He's going to play alongside Jimmy and Steph consistently. He led the team in minutes in the game 4 or game 5 rather, that they won their game 4 back in Golden State. They won that one before they went back to Houston. That was a big Pods game, and that was something that Steve Kerr talked about in the presser before the game that made it out. That was like, yeah, we're really looking for Brandon this game, and he got 40 minutes, especially with Jimmy still pretty hobbled in that one. So I think that's going to continue to be the case here. If you give him, obviously regular season not the same as postseason, but Dubs were really fighting to get into the 6th seed as much as they could, already in like not win or die games, but games that they're going all out and playing playoff rotation minutes for a lot of guys. Pods was already in that with them in those games where he's getting like 34 plus minutes with Jimmy and Steph playing with him. He's at 24.5 PA per game in those minutes with 34 plus. And like I said, he just recently led the team in minutes. So I'm going to keep giving him that share of the minutes there. And I don't think we're going to see a 30-point blowout that's going to keep the Dub starters off the floor in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd come off that early, even if it was a blowout in a clinching game, right? I mean, but yeah, I mean, you know what else was happening in games 2 and 3 is no Jimmy Butler, who has become Pod's like spirit animal. He's just like completely unlocked his game. Not necessarily from an X's and O standpoint, I guess, maybe from just like gassing him up though. But yeah, since Jimmy's come to town, he's at 19 PA. Before that, he was at 12.6 on the season. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's gone even more as the minutes have started to rise. So I like that for sure, because I don't necessarily expect Jimmy to be able to do everything at the height of his powers. I'm not going to fade him, but I expect other guys to have to step up. And I'm gonna take Steph here, not with the points, just the rebounds and assists actually, because yeah, I mean, Houston is throwing all their cards on the table to just say like somebody else has to beat us, get the ball out of his hands, and Steph is going to impact the game one way or another. Like, I mean, he is obviously a Hall of Fame all-time great who knows how to impact with his rebounding and assisting, and underrated as a rebounder here. in this series. He's at a 54% rebound chance rate. The last two in Golden State, when he got 40 minutes, he was grabbing 5 of 9.5 chances. 70% of those were contested, as they often are with Houston. So it's like, oh, he's matched up with Amen Thompson. He's not going to be able to grab the boards. Like he gets in there and he gets them. And the deferred rebounds I talked about with Draymond, most of those are just like letting Steph get it, right? He's just like boxing out and being like, all right, we want Steph to bring the ball up. As far as the passing, he's on 11.7 potential assists the last three here since Jimmy got hurt, getting 6.3 dimes. He even had 7 dimes on 11 potentials in just 24 minutes of that blowout last time out. So that was Houston's game plan once again, is like anybody else, make him give it up. He even had 8 assists on just 28 passes in that April game when he got held to 3 points. And he's averaging literally twice that in the last 3 in the series. He's averaging 56 passes a game. So the dimes I like here. I think one or the other is going to come home for you. You can definitely get plus money on the dimes or add it to a parlay. But when you add them both together, the final 3 of any playoff series since 22, Steph is 16-3 to this number. The one of the unders was the aforementioned Game 5 punt in Memphis 3 years ago, where the Warriors didn't care. So I mean, basically 16-2. And you look at like clinching games like this, like he raises his level for sure.
Yep. Yeah. I love this. I was going to mention this to you. The rebounds for Steph I love, especially against this team. But I think the matchup also calls for the dimes for sure, as we saw at the beginning of last game. Now, look, he's got to be more aggressive. He's got to take a few more shots to come out in early in the game. And I know a lot of times he likes to facilitate early. I would worry about that he and Jimmy didn't have a point in the first quarter last game. But at the same time, this as far as the assists go, like they're selling out. There's no option there. It's not even really like he's like forcing assists and trying to not take shots. It's just they are pressing up on him that much. And then as far as the boards go, he always guards Dillon Brooks. He's had 5 or more rebounds in basically 70% of the games he's played against Houston since last season. 3 of them last year. There's 9 of them this season. I think he's at about 75%, like 8 of or whatever 8 of 12 is. That is 75%. So I think we're going to be in a pretty good spot here for him to get the boards. Playing off ball as much as he does against Dillon Brooks. And then he continues to get the rebounds as a result against this Houston squad, who also, when they are chucking these threes, obviously a lot of long rebounds, especially with Fred's high arcing shot. That thing will bounce back to half court when it hits back iron sometimes. Let me go to Jalen Green. Let's just get this over with. Jalen Green under 23.5 PRA. I say that because I don't love just being like, well, I mean, what do you want me to say? He doesn't do it against this team. Even at 23.5 PRA, we're not too low. We've been at games where this is 30.5 PRA for JG at times, but this is just such an awful matchup. Now, I will say, obviously we know he's gone under this in 7 of 9 games this season against the Dubs. And the only time he's gone over here in the playoffs was when he did manage to score, 39 in that game too. And another sort of moment in time, we thought that was going to happen here in game 5 as well as with JG, where it was okay, not only is he getting going early, everything is drawn up for him. It's really just give him the ball in space and go. And Gary was flying all over chasing him. He was hitting shots, and then his got some bounce in his step, and then he got hurt and he lost all that momentum. And also, I just want to say that is such a clear indication of how much he needs that momentum, and how when he comes to a place like Golden State and he doesn't have the crowd behind him, it's going to be very hard for him to get that bounce in his step, where he was coming down and he looked like bouncy Jalen Green, the athlete who can get his shot off against most people, not some dude who comes up to his chin like Gary Payton Jr. does, and is still managing to stop him from getting his shot off. So that's where we're at with the points. I thought about leaving the rebounds out, but again, one of the key things about Jalen Green, in addition to the motivation of the crowd and all that, is what Ime Udoka said after he played him for 23 minutes in game 4, right? And that was the game where he saw the fewest minutes he's had against his team despite his struggles. And Ime was like, JG can't allow his poor offense to impact his defense. And that's why he saw 24 minutes, because as you well know, Nate, Ime Udoka is going to be one of the NBA coaches that will put you right next to him on the bench if he doesn't think you're giving it on defense, unlike some NBA coaches who might be afraid of guys who make twice as much of them a year, which is understandable. Ime doesn't seem to care about that. And that would be the problem here, is like once things start going wrong for JG, that's one of these big outs, then he just sort of falls into the wayside. The usage rate for Şengün and Fred in that game 4 that I was talking about was through the roof. I believe combined was at like 58%, and that includes the touch time for them, which was most, like they had all of the potential assists and most of the touch time between those two guys, because they didn't feel comfortable with any of the third guys coming in. Like it was like, you guys were doing the ball handling. That's something I would look at again here in correlation with JG, is that because his touches have been so few, he had 2.5 minutes of the ball in his hands in game 4. Because we're in that sort of spot with him, Şengün probably back to the dimes, stuff like that, because he's going to be out there closer to the top of the key, like you said, looking for switches to get Draymond off of him, and then also facilitating or hitting some little stuff in the paint. But that's all, with it.
Yeah, exactly. You said comfortable. He's a rhythm player, and he's looking over his shoulder at this point in his first playoff series, basically, and just like, am I going to do something to get myself benched? So like, even if he isn't benched, like he's playing so tentatively that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's like a guy who hits these step backs and gets himself going. I drawing a little bit of a comparison to a certain James Harden, who is not going to deliver in a game 6 spot like this more times than not. So Jalen Green, even if you were to get like the guaranteed minutes, I don't know if you could trust him to come through like this. And like you said, it's easy to not have to sweat it as much if the coach is just like, you know what, let's just get him out of there. Because a lot of these unders in the playoffs, you are really going to sweat down to the end, to be like, no overtime, no free throws down the stretch. But you're really betting on a coach here.
Yeah, exactly. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are sub to that channel. Like we said, coming back with everything for the next round starting on Monday of next week. So until we see you next, happy betting.